message was given to me probably early last year, and it was about the time when the then Health Minister, Javid, said that all healthcare professionals who work in NHS must have the COVID vaccine. So many of my colleagues up and down the country, and some of my colleagues here, we were angry about it, we were disappointed, but we were not going to bow to this demand. The church was praying, we individually were praying, and I believed God, and I said that if I can never be a doctor again in the NHS, then I'll accept that. But it was difficult. I then applied for a remote job as a remote GP. After 2 interviews and online assessment, I got the job, and I was happy. But on the 31st of January last year, I woke up to a text message from Pastor Jackie. And the text message said that the health minister had done a U-turn and that we didn't have to have the COVID vaccine anymore. There was jubilation, there was elation, we were happy that God had done it. God had come through for each and every one of us healthcare professionals. But as the days went on, I became deflated. I began to question my practices. Had I really trusted in God? Did I really have faith? Did I try to help God by going to get another job? Did I really trust him? Hold your thoughts there for a second. So, the title of my message today is a prayer, and it's a confession that we as Christians should be confessing on a regular basis. The title is, "O Lord, increase my faith." O Lord, increase my faith. What does faith actually mean? We've heard that word so many times. You know, we talk about your faith, your faith. We've heard it so many times. What does it mean? It has different meanings. I'm going to give you the meaning from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. It says, faith has multiple definitions, including something that is believed, especially with strong conviction. Complete trust. Belief and trust in and loyalty to God. But my favourite definition is a firm belief in something for which there is no proof. So the word faith is mentioned 247 times in the King James Version Bible. And as I was doing my message, I started thinking, you know, how much is too little faith? How much faith should a Christian have? I wanted to quantify it. How much faith should we have as Christians? So let's look at the 2 examples in the Bible. The first is Matthew 17:20. So unfortunately, I've got the King James Version, but we don't have the King James Version here, so I'm still going to read from mine, but you can follow on the screen. It says, "So Jesus said to them, 'Because of your unbelief, for assuredly I say to you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, and you say to this mountain, move from here to there, it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you.'" Luke 17:6. "So the Lord said, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you can say to this mulberry tree, be pulled up by the roots and be planted in the sea, and it would obey you." This Bible verses tell us that we need a small amount of faith. A mustard seed is a very small seed. We need a small amount of faith to get big results. But what's important, it's not about how big the faith is, it's whether you have stubborn faith, whether you have unwavering faith, whether how strong or how firm your faith is. That's more important, because you can have a small amount of faith and not believe, really, Or you can have a small amount of faith and your faith can be unwavering. Amen? The most important thing is to trust in God. We don't trust in ourselves when we're faced with battles or problems. We trust in God. Our whole belief should be in God. The mustard seed faith is, like I said, is a small amount of faith. And as Christians, maybe when we gave our life to Christ, we had a small amount of faith. But a Christian who is 10 years into the Christian dorm should have a greater amount of faith through listening to the Word of God, testimonies, and reading the Word. So, as I was doing my message, I said, well, God, what about people who have no faith at all? Zero faith, no faith whatsoever. What about them? If God has promised them something, would God still do it if they have no faith? Let's look at an example with Sarah and Abraham. This was touched on last week through the baby dedication. So Sarah was married to Abraham, and Abraham is the father of faith. And Sarah had no faith. So the scriptures are between Genesis 18, 9 to 15, but we don't have time to go through all of them. So I'm going to move to verse 13. And the Lord said to Abraham, so let me give you some background. So God is speaking to Abraham, and Sarah's listening. God tells Abraham that he is going to bless Sarah with a child, and Sarah laughs. She doesn't laugh out loud, she laughs inside of her. She's probably thinking, I'm 90, I'm menopausal, my ovaries are dried up. What is this man saying? How can I have a child? So, if we read verse 13, and the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh? Shall I surely bear a child since I'm old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return to you according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. 15. But Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. Sarah's actions were not pleasing to God. She laughed. She didn't believe. She had no faith whatsoever. But the Bible clearly tells us without faith, it's impossible to believe God. Without faith, it's impossible to believe God. Let's fast forward to Genesis 21, 1 to 2. And the Lord visited Sarah, and he said, as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had spoken. 2. For Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. To walk by faith is a choice. It's a choice that each and every one of us can make. It's not imposed on us. It's your choice to walk by faith. Whether you believe what God has promised you, whether you accept what God has promised you, if God said it, he will do it. Sarah limited God by the natural, forgetting that our God can do the supernatural. I say it again. Sarah limited God by the natural, forgetting that our God can do the supernatural. In this case, Sarah didn't believe, but her husband, the father of faith, believed. And in marriage, when two becomes one, the faith of Abraham in this case justified Sarah. But let us suppose that Sarah was on her own. No Abraham, God had given her another promise. Do you think that Sarah would have been able to receive what God had promised her? No, because she simply didn't believe. The Bible has told us without faith it's impossible to please God. You can only receive something if you believe it. Amen? In order to walk this journey, we must walk by faith and not by what we see with our physical eyes. In order to walk by faith, we must walk in the spiritual realm. Many times, what our human eyes see about a situation, circumstances, illnesses, is not how God sees it. And it's totally different in most cases in the way in which God sees it. If we cannot see past the limitations of our physical eyes, it's very difficult for us to walk by faith. So you could be visually impaired, you could have no vision whatsoever and still walk by faith. The reason being is because we don't use our physical eyes to see the things of God. This morning we sang Waymaker, and I was so happy because in that song Waymaker it says, even when I don't see you are working, even when I do not feel you are working. We as Christians need to move away from seeing and feeling and just believing God. Amen? So faith goes in hand with obedience. My sister has stole some of my message. So it goes hand in hand with obedience, and we can find the message here in John 2, 1-9. We're not going to go through all of it just because of time. And this is the story of Jesus doing the first miracle in which he turned water into wine. So Jesus, his disciples and Mary were invited to a wedding. And when they got to the wedding, the wine ran out. And Mary, the mother of Jesus, said to Jesus, they have no wine. And Jesus said to her, what's it got to do with me? I'm a guest here, what's it got to do with me? Then Mary did something which was spectacular. She looked to the servants and said to them, whatever he says for you to do, just do it. Jesus then told the servants to go and get the pots and to fill it with water. He didn't tell them to go and get some wine, he told them to fill it with water. They filled the water pots, and he drew some out. And he told them to take it to the master of the feast. And they took it, and when the master of the feast had tasted the water, he tasted wine. The instruction was to fill the water pots with water. And then the supernatural took place. Mary's faith was so strong in her son Jesus. She knew Jesus. She knew her son very well. She knew what he was capable of doing. She knew that he had the power to come forth and bring some wine into this wedding. Yes. She was so sure that she gave that instruction to the servants and walked away because she knew that Jesus would do it. Mary had faith in the abilities of her son Jesus, and because she knew Jesus and all the powers that he had, she was so confident. I don't know this morning who or what you have your faith in. Whether it's in man, whether it's in the doctors, whether it's in your lawyer, put your faith in Jesus. Amen. So I want to go on now and use this next passage to try and explain, like my sister did, the characteristics as us as Christians. It's my favourite story in the Bible, and I know some of you know this story already because I've shared it with some of you before, but it's the story of the woman with the issue of blood. This woman had a name. She was given a name at birth. But the Bible calls her the woman with the issue of blood. Yeah. That's not her name, but her illness defined her. That's right. Yeah. Her illness defined her. This story highlights the power of faith and the love of God. Yeah. So I'm going to read the verses quite quickly. Just follow, please, and I'll give some words as I'm going along. Verse 25. And a certain woman which had an issue of blood 12 years. This woman bled for 12 whole years. If you calculate that, that's like 400, just under 4,500 days of bleeding. She would have spent a lot of money on sanitary towels and products. She would have felt very weak because she was probably anemic, her blood count was very low. She would have had to buy loads of clothes because the blood would have stained them. But she was patient. 12 whole years. She did not lose patience for 1 second, even though she knew her situation was hopeless. 26. And had suffered many things of many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and nothing bettered, but rather grew worse. This woman went to doctor after doctor after doctor. She went looking for help. She had a problem, and she put her trust in these physicians to help her, to heal her. Every time she went to a doctor, she had an expectation that today I'm going to get healed. Today he's going, or she is going to give me medication to heal me of this issue of blood. But rather, it got worse. She had the courage to seek help. This lady who was considered an outcast in the society, she had a chronic condition that defied medication, but she had the courage to seek help. We as Christians should never be afraid to seek help when we have a problem. It's important, the channels in which we seek help. It's important who you go to seek help, but we should never be afraid to seek help. When she heard of Jesus, came in the press behind and touched his garment. This woman had been everywhere except to the great physician. She heard that Jesus was coming to town. In her mind, she devised a plan. If I can just get to his garment. She had faith in Jesus. She believed that if she could position herself, be in the right position, and get to the garment of Jesus, that she will be healed. Positioning and persistence as Christians is very important. That we are in the right position at the right time. We could be a millimetre off and we could miss our miracle or our blessing. We need to be persistent in our struggles, our battles. We shouldn't give up too easily. This woman was persistent 12 whole years. 28. For she said, if I may touch but his clothes, I shall be made whole. This woman put aside her fear and marched forward, pressed forward with her faith. She knew there was crowds there. She knew that she had to get to Jesus in order to get this healing. She had unwavering faith in Jesus. She had stubborn faith in Jesus. She did not care who was beside her, who was around her. She wanted to press forward. She put her eyes on Jesus and she went there. She did not allow the fear to rob her of her miracle. That singular act of touching the garment was a courageous act, reminding us that fear should never rule our lives as Christians. 29, and straight away the fountain of her blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of the plague. Faith can bring about instant healing. This woman got her miracle. She was healed, and then she tried to sneak out from the crowd. We should be ready to testify when God does something great in our lives. We should be ready to shout it from the mountaintops that God has healed me, God has blessed me, God has done this in my life. She was humbled by what had happened. When we are blessed, we need to remember where the blessing came from, and we need to remember to give God all the glory. So the story goes on, and basically Jesus turned to his disciples and said, somebody has touched me. They looked at him. Of course somebody's touched you. There's loads of people here. No, somebody has touched me. When she touched Jesus, power left Jesus, and he knew that somebody had touched him. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing that what she had done, what was done in her, came and fell down before him and told him the truth. And this is my favourite bit. And he said to her, "Daughter." Her name has now changed from the woman with the issue of blood to daughter. When your miracle comes, your name will change. He said, "Daughter, thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace and behold of thy plague." This woman moved in faith. She risked public shame and scrutiny to approach Jesus. Jesus honoured her faith. The story of the woman with the issue of blood is a powerful reminder of all the different characteristics: faith, patience, courage, positioning, persistence, gratitude, all these characteristics that we should cultivate in our own lives. How far this afternoon, how far are you willing to go with your faith? Are you hindered by crowds? Are you ready to press forward to get your breakthrough? As I begin to conclude, I want to encourage you with something that happened to us as a family on Sunday, the 12th of July, 2015. It was about this time, it was a Sunday, I was actually in UCLH hospital. I was in labour with Hannah. God blessed us with an amazing midwife. She was 22 years of age, her name was Maria, and she was wise beyond her years. She was an angel. As I was giving birth, like in all my deliveries, my husband stood at my right side and he was praying. And as we were going through in the labour, Maria turned to my husband and said, "Sam, press the emergency button." My husband didn't respond, and then she said, "Sam, press the emergency button." My husband looked at Maria and said to Maria, "She will be fine." He was referring to Hannah, and he carried on praying. Maria looked at Sam again and said, "Sam, press the button." My husband carried on praying, and Maria calmly walked round my husband and pressed the button. And within seconds, my whole room was filled with obstetricians, paediatricians, anaesthetists, midwives. The whole room was filled. Hannah was not breathing. Hannah did not cry. She was floppy like a rag doll. They began to work on Hannah. They were giving her oxygen, they were rubbing her chest, they were doing everything. And my husband looked at me and said, "She'll be fine." I panicked, because this is not what God had told us. This was not the script that we had known. My daughter, who I carried for 9 months, wasn't breathing. They then whisked Hannah off to Skaboo, that special care baby unit, with oxygen. And I was trying to tell Maria to hurry up so that I could go and see my daughter. I then, after giving birth, I showered and went off to special care baby unit to see my daughter. And when I looked at her, she looked perfect. I couldn't see anything wrong with her. I laughed. The devil had come too late to the party. We had invited Jesus 9 months before. The nurses told me that Hannah would have to stay in special care baby unit for at least 24 hours to monitor her, because she came into this world not breathing. So after spending time with her, they said that we should leave her in the incubator and I should go upstairs to my room to just rest. And I went upstairs, and the power of God that is able to do anything, to do all things, they called me within 30 minutes and said, "Your daughter doesn't need to be down here anymore, we're bringing her up." years on, Hannah has never tasted a single amount of antibiotics. She's never been to a hospital. The doctors in this country don't know Hannah. She has no health issues, and this is all to the glory of God. This morning, or this afternoon, I don't know what you're believing God for. I don't know what miracle God has promised you. I don't know whether it's your papers, your marriage, a child. I don't know what's challenging your faith. But I will say, stay stubbornly strong in your faith. And that which God has promised, that which He has said in the scriptures that He will do for you, He will do it. Finally, confessing or calling those things as not as though they are is an important part of your demonstration of God's faith. O Lord, increase our faith.